Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Obviously, as you can see, our chapel format's going to be a little bit different this morning. If you went to Temple, Texas, these are your chairs up here. It looks like I put too many out. Lucas, you were not part of this, so yeah, sadly. And Baloo's even on time, which that's a rare occasion. Even on the campaign, it was hard to get him there on time, but when he got there, he really did. He was really something. All right, is this everybody?
Oh, one for Moss and one for Robert, honorary.
They're not here.
No?
That's probably true, yes. Yeah, and that's right. Moss is in Arkansas, and I forgot about it. That's why I have too many chairs. So yes. Well, this group here last week we went to Temple, and we had an absolute blast together. It was a really fun time. We worked with Gospel Sharing Ministries, which is a group that we have worked with off and on, more on than off, for actually quite a few years. And they're a group of retired people who have taken a campaign format that's been in existence for probably nearly 50 years, and they continue to use that. And they actually run the campaign, so we go and they kind of lead the efforts and everything. But it was a fun time for us together. I think of all the campaigns I've been on, this might have been the funnest group ever. We really had a good time together. And as far as campaigning went, it's my understanding there were some restorations after we left, and we ended up with a total of 5 baptisms. And so we certainly had some successes. But with campaigns like this, there's also some challenges that we face. So what I'm going to do this morning, because I want everybody that went to have an opportunity to speak, I'm going to work with 3 questions, and I'm going to let each of them answer that question that I ask, and we'll do this until we run out of time. Now, we can talk more about this at the end, but Paul tells me there are no announcements this morning that he has. So we're just going to roll right into this. So first question I want to ask, I'll just start with Blue, and you can pass the mic on down the line. The first question I want to ask is, of everything that we did last week, what was your most positive experience? So I'll start with that, and I'll give you the mic, and all of you that same question. What was the most positive experience you had of the week?
Well, I think personally for me, I'm going to stand up. Personally for me, my positive experience is to knock the doors and being as a leader and leading the group and knocking the doors and telling people about the gospel, because that's what we are training here. So we are in SIBI to learn about Bible and to put that in practice. So the best thing that I had in the campaign is to be as a leader and lead the group. Yep, so far.
Yeah, I'd say for me, one of the biggest positives was getting to work with both the church there and the folks from Gospel Sharing Ministries, and really getting to experience kind of all different types of people from all around the country, truly in different areas. We get some of that even here at SIBI, but they're out on the field, so to speak, working together with the common purpose of just sharing Jesus with their community and bringing people to the Lord. So that was really a huge positive, to be able to work with so many great people in order to accomplish the mission that we as Christians are all called to do.
I'm not going to stand up. My most positive experience was one of the encounters I had while I was out on the field. So I'll tell a brief story to kind of let you know what happened. We were door knocking. I think it was the last day before we left. And so we were walking down the street. I was with 2 other people. And so we were just knocking doors, whoever would answer, and we'd tell them about the gospel or give them a pamphlet for the church we were working with. But there was one house that obviously didn't want visitors. It had a chain on the gate. I think there might have been a no trespassing. They weren't interested. But Balu noticed that the older man who had been living there had come to get something out of his yard. So Balu, being Balu, said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And the dude opened right up. Super down for small talk. He loved chatting with us. But once church things started getting mentioned, you could tell he kind of drew back a little bit and he wasn't too interested. But we were able to chat with him long enough that his wife came out. And now she was down. So we talked to her for a few more minutes, small talk, and I kind of gave him the same pitch of like, hey, here's the pamphlet for the church we've been working with. Look at it when you have some time. We'd love for you to just take a look at it. And so she grabbed it. She was eager and she took a look at it, and I'll tell you, she just about started crying, just like that. And at first we were like, what's up? And after a moment to herself, she kind of said like, "Oh, you're working with the Avenue T, the church we were working with." Turns out when she was a young girl, she's in her 70s now, but when she was a young girl, that's where she had been baptized, and that's where her and her husband got married. But unfortunately, he isn't a believer, so she had stopped going for who knows how many years. So now that she's older and she has kids and grandkids, it was weighing on her heart that she had kind of fallen away. And so she was so excited that we were there. She saw it as a sign from God, and she was very, very thankful for us being there. So that was a very positive experience and very, very touching to me.
I guess I will stand. So for me, one of the biggest positives was just, it surprised me how receptive some people were. I went into this fully thinking that nobody would really want to talk, because when I wasn't a Christian, I was the type who'd shoo them away from the door within 30 seconds. And there were a lot of people who were like, you could tell they wanted to talk with us, they wanted us to pray with them, and they wanted to hear about Jesus. And that was just really surprising and a positive to me. And then also, the biggest positive from this trip for me is definitely the camaraderie and how we all bonded together, because it's been a long time since I've actually felt like I was part of a group, and this week really made me feel like I was part of a group again. So
yeah, I'll echo something that Luke said, and then another positive. The camaraderie was great. Sunset has already been a great experience, just for feeling like part of the family of God, but really just getting to spend time together each and every day after we were done doing our mission was just so wonderful. But the other positive, and I think really tying it in with why we were there, it's really cool to see that door knocking does have a purpose, and it does work. And just to be kind of blunt with it, I'm kind of tired of people saying it doesn't work, because it does. And if we had 5 people saved and a lot more people hearing the truth, I think that that's so valuable. So that's the biggest positive for me.
Yeah, so I feel like for my biggest positive is just having a foolproof way to take somebody not knowing anything, so from start to finish, the method that we used to talk to people, it was just a lot of the verses that we used and walked them through really took them from 0 to 100, which I thought was a good thing to have in your tool belt if needed. And then for me also just getting out of my comfort zone, talking to people, it can be really intimidating to knock on somebody's door. You don't know who's going to answer the door. And just getting out into the community too, you could tell a lot of these people just wanted somebody to talk to. Like we would just sit in their driveway and talk for them for like 10, 20 minutes, and they would be leading the conversation, just really just wanting someone to listen to them, which was really good.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it was just, oh, it's a little loud. Overall, it was just a really good week. Getting out there, getting to see people actually be receptive to the message. I was fortunate enough to be a part of a study that did lead to a baptism. So that was really cool to witness. And I mean, just overall, this whole trip was a super positive experience. Like what Tyler and Luke said, the camaraderie was excellent. Hanging out with each other each and every day, taking a late night trip to Buc-ee's, stuff like that. It was, just messing around, making stupid jokes like dude soup, because, a hot tub full of dudes, that's dude soup. New term for some of you, But yeah, it was just a great experience overall, and I'd recommend to anybody ever considering being a part of a campaign like this with a big group of guys and ladies, just do it. It's so good to be able to get out there, spread the gospel, and then have a bunch of fun while you're doing it.
I think the most positive experience I had, besides the camaraderie, was being able to go out into a neighborhood, and obviously it's not our neighborhood, but still being able to knock on doors and tell people and show people that there are people in the neighborhood and from the church that care about all of these neighbors. And even if it's not about the gospel, just like, because we would open it a lot of times with, is there anything we could pray for you or for anyone you know? And just letting them know that they have people that they can go to for things, even if they don't know us, even if they'll never see most of us again. I just think it's a really cool experience to be able to show people, hey, I know that our world's changing and it's not as open as it used to be, but there are people that still care and that care about this community. So I really like that.
I think for me, there was this one door that we knocked on. This older man, he was so intimidating at first. He creaked the door. All I could see, like, his eyes staring into my soul. It was very intimidating. And then there's these two big dogs, two Dobermans in there that, like, I wasn't sure if he was cracking the door for his own privacy or for our safety, because these dogs are scary. But by the end of it, he seemed like he was just a really damaged individual. And seeing him, by the end of it, he kind of came out of the door, blocking the dogs, but he was sitting there, and like he was an older man, so he had a few I don't know what you'd call it, like he kind of had like a hitch in his neck, so he was just kind of having a hard time looking at us. But every now and then he would glance up at us and make eye contact with me, and it was like, man, it was so powerful. It didn't end up leading to a baptism, but it was, I think the real goal of being there was offering our support as a church. I believe he felt the warmth and the love that we didn't know him, but I think he felt that we really did care for him, and it was really stinking cool to see that.
All right. Well, some of those things you guys told me I hadn't even heard yet, so it's really cool to hear that. But, with campaigns like this, there are certainly challenges. And even within the system that we were using, I know that all of us felt challenged at times. And so since we're sharing the whole experience, that's the next question I want to ask you guys is, what was the most challenging thing for you on this campaign? And I don't want to say share a negative per se, but just a challenge. Something that you found the most challenging about either the system as a whole or just what we were doing. So I'll start again with Blue and let you go.
I think for me, the best challenging, well, we knocked several doors, maybe 400, I think so. But each and every time we knock the door, we don't knock the same door. Not the same people open the door, because we have some positive experience and we have some negative experience. There's a time where me and Pierce, we get a little bit, not frustrating, but it's a weird thing, because there's a guy, I think he's kind of like a drug dealer or maybe crackhead something. So Yeah, he opened the door, and there's a lady, and her name is Anita. And we knocked the door. He came out with a cigarette. He's keep abusing us like verbally, and he just throw the cigarette and tell me to pick up. And he told Pierre, "Hey, you got a bald hair head," and he told Anita that how many husbands and how many kids you have, and he abused verbally. But still, the lady with us, bless her heart, she said we can pray for him. So we had like negative and a little bit positive experience, but we rejoice in that because that's what we have been called for, to preach the gospel, not to the people who had ears to hear, but people who don't have ears to hear. So definitely that's a challenging. So I would recommend like take up this challenge, because if you preach the gospel to the people who have already know the gospel, what do you gain? But you got to preach the gospel to the people who never heard about Jesus, who never heard about his love, his compassion, and why he came to this world. So that's what we did over there. This is my second time for me personally to participate in this campaign. So I personally take up as a challenge, and it's not easy and it's not too hard, but we can do it. If we have a confidence that we can do it.
Yeah, overall, I think from the start, a big challenge that was presented was in working with the Gospel Sharing Ministries. They send out, we go in teams of 3, and there has to be at least one woman on every team, which was definitely, once we got out there, can see how beneficial and big that was, and people even just opening their doors and being much more receptive and wanting to talk with you. But because of that, not all of us were able to go out every time that we were, just because there weren't the numbers as far as the ladies that were present weren't there for all of us too. So that, especially initially, was a challenge of, I think, for a lot of us, of wanting to to get out there and feel like we're doing what we came there to do. But that being said, in that challenge, those of us who did stay back either helped to kind of prep things and materials for the future, and worked with some of the Gospel Sharing Ministries people that stayed back to kind of give us some practice, either with the study or just even just visiting with us and telling us about their lives, which ultimately was really encouraging to me, and I think a lot of us personally. But so that was a challenge, but ultimately resulted in positive experiences too.
Not to be contrary to Balu, people that haven't heard the gospel obviously need to hear the gospel. The most challenging thing for me, especially going door to door, is the people that know Christ but don't know Christ. A core foundation of the Gospel Sharing Ministries curriculum and kind of their method is asking people, if the Lord were to come right now, today, do you think that you would go to heaven? And I'm honestly shocked at the overwhelming response of yes. Almost everyone we talked to, unless they were like visibly not anywhere close to Christian, would say yes. And I'm just thinking of one lady in particular. I think she said she was between 91 and 93 in her later years, and she said that she'd been Catholic her entire life. And that's just difficult to talk to someone like that. Wonderful woman. She said she's very involved, but it's just challenging.
For me, the biggest challenge was definitely the actual act of knocking on the doors. I am such an introvert, always been kind of a lone wolf type person, and like I used to work in corrections, and I'll tell you, I'd rather sit down and stare at a murderer or serial killer and potentially have to get into a physical altercation with them than knock on somebody's door. It makes me feel sick to my stomach. But I was able to get through it, and I was able to get in there and actually do some work, and it made me realize I could do it if I am called to do it again. So
I think the biggest challenge for me was probably, I think the material was good, and obviously it was effective. I don't think the material is built for everyone, though. I think it's targeted towards older people who know about the faith. I don't think it would be effective for someone who is either in the younger generations or doesn't know anything about Christ. The presentation, generally, if you're presenting the whole gospel presentation, would take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. And so that's a lot of scripture. The problem is that when you're talking to someone who doesn't know anything about Christ, yes, you're telling them literally everything they need to know. But the problem is keeping their attention long enough. And with younger people, I think they just want to get to the point. Overall, I do feel like it's effective, and I think if we even got one, even if we didn't get one person saved, they heard the gospel, but we had 5 people saved, so it was effective.
Yeah, so similar to Tyler's challenge, I would say the material, while it was, as I mentioned in my pro, being foolproof, like taking someone to not knowing anything to, start to finish, I think that it can be too bare bones for somebody that may know quite a bit already about the Bible. It just, taking somebody from 0 to 100 may not be effective for somebody that may already know a lot of information. So I think, being able to be flexible with the material and bring in other scriptures and just having a different approach, for different people, I think would be very beneficial.
Yeah, kind of going along the lines of Mattia, Tyler, and Pierce. The material was really good, but I think it was 29 verses or something like that. And like Pierce was saying, what do you do when you have somebody who knows at least something and has some prior knowledge or experience with it? And, when you're coming into a Bible study, you can't treat every Bible study the same, just like you can't treat every person the same. And I was fortunate enough to go out with a different leader every single time that we went out. And some of the leaders did an excellent job of adapting or shortening the study based on what that person's knowledge was. And we even did a sit back when some of us couldn't go out, and a man named Kenzel May gave us a shorter rundown of how to do it. And so that was excellent to see that there were leaders there who were adapting the study for people. But yeah, just overall, you gotta be adaptable when you're studying the Bible with somebody, and I think that is one of the flaws that kind of came out with the idea of just sticking to this study and this study only.
I think the biggest challenge for me was probably similar to Luke, of just going up to the doors and knocking, because I'm also not someone who does this. And along with that is knocking on the doors, not knowing what you're going to get. I know we're not supposed to care about that because, again, they are supposed to hear the gospel, but there's always that fear in the back of your mind, like, oh, maybe they're going to come out the door and just deck me in the face. Who knows? Anything could happen. And so being able to have that experience of going up to the doors, knocking, and again, me being a woman, I was the vision of the group, I guess, the approachable one. So I was always at the front, and so it was definitely an interesting experience. I am glad I did it, but it was a challenge to overcome the fear of knocking on doors. Thankfully, it got easier as we went, because then I got used to it.
I originally was going to say something about the material, but I don't want to beat a dead horse. So I'm gonna shift it. I think the most like challenging thing for me was I noticed that my I don't want to call it pride. Oh, I guess it is pride. My insecurity of doing this was way bigger than the leaders. They were so comfortable with just going up, knock on the door loudly at several times. And I'm sitting there like, oh my word, okay, here we go. This one leader he would do it with his Bible. Boom, boom, boom. Oh my word. Sometimes they'd answer the door, sometimes they won it. And the second they won it, on to the next one. And I'm still mentally recovering from the first one. So I'm not engaged. I'm just on like fight or flight, survival instinct. I'm holding the flyers. I'm going. It was draining, and it lasted for 2 hours at a time. We eat, and you go back out, and you do it again. So that it was draining. That was my biggest challenge.
Well, thank you guys for sharing that. What's funny about this is everything every one of you said, I can totally sympathize with. Down to Tyler right here at the very end. I'm like, been there, know exactly what that feels like. Yes, it's very draining until you get used to it. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing all of that. We've got probably just enough time left. If you're very, very brief, the last thing I want to ask, what is something you learned from this? Because this is obviously an educational institution, and part of this experience is to learn above and beyond anything else that happens. So briefly, one thing you learned on this campaign.
Well, I learned a lot, but I can't put that in words. But definitely, it's a great experience that everybody had to experience in their lifetime. Door knocking, and I had a privilege to be as a leader, and that's the most precious thing for me. And I learned a lot of things.
Yeah, one thing I learned and just saw put into action was that the power is not in me or you or anyone, it's in the Word of God. And to see how in the studies that we did have, and even just conversations with people, once you really started going through the Word, how a lot of people truly were interested and got them thinking. And if nothing else, I feel like we left them with the Word of God and for them to look to that. So that was a big thing.
I learned that Matt Glory wears a Tommy Boy shirt to the pool. Seeing so many great people from Gospel Sharing Ministries just go out. They call it a lifestyle. And once you learn how to be able to share that, the gospel with someone, it's hard to go back.
I learned that there's a lot more people out there who are willing to talk about Jesus than I ever thought there would be. Coming from Colorado, it kind of blew my mind how many people actually wanted to. Oh, I also learned that you can spend a lot of money at Buc-ee's in a short amount of time.
I was holding somebody's hand. Tell them your number.
I learned that door knocking is effective despite what people may say. And evangelism may not be your spiritual gift, but we're all called to do it in some form.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I learned just to get comfortable talking to strangers. You know, I always say just close your eyes and jump when you're scared. Like, you just have to do it. You psych yourself out if you just, keep thinking about it. You just got to get out there and do it. And it does get easier once you just do it.
Yeah, like Luke said, Buc-ee's dangerous for your bank account. You spend a week with Matt Gloy, you start talking like him and have the same cadence as him. And then on a serious note, when it comes to spreading the gospel, you got to be like Nike and just do it,
Something I learned was a easier way to articulate the requirements or things God expects from us for salvation, because I wasn't able to articulate it before, and then going through the verses over and over and over with people, I was like, oh, now I could, like, if someone asked me a question, I can answer it a lot easier than I could have before.
For me, before this, I was pretty confident in my ability to talk to people about Scripture and the Bible, But after this, I realized that I've got a lot to learn because the knowledge is one thing, but the articulation, the passion, the nerves, and even the knowledge. Like, I've got so much to learn, and it was a good experience. It was difficult, but it was good.
Well, I think you guys can tell we had a lot of fun on this trip, and experience was great, and we grew a lot closer. And one of the things I learned is Gen Z lingo that I didn't know before, and I come home starting to use it, and my daughter, by about, I don't know, 6 hours after I got home dead, stop using Gen Z lingo. It's weird. I said cringe and big brain. So, but no, I learned that we have and I'm going to be serious for a moment, then I'll close this in a prayer. I learned that we have a phenomenal level 1 class. These guys have become my good friends, and they did great on this campaign. I love the conversations we had about how we would adapt the study when we need to and how we would be more adaptable with it, even maybe the way we share with younger people, all of this. We talked about it all week. And so it was a learning experience for all of us together. And yes, the togetherness was unparalleled. And you need to ask Luke how much he spent at Buc-ee's, because it really is quite something when you ask him. It really is. But we did. We had a great time, and it was a great learning experience, and souls were saved in the process. And that's what it's all about at its very core. And so I want to thank you all for going and for the great week. And Robert, if he's watching online, and Matthew Moss were also with us. I want to thank you guys. Had just as great a time with you, that you were part of all of this too. And it was a lot of fun and a great learning experience. So I'll ask very quickly. I don't see any. We don't have any guests this morning, do we? I forgot to do that earlier. Like Paul said, don't know of any announcements. So I'll go ahead and dismiss us in a prayer, and then we'll go to our classes.